It's The Big Show with me, Alex Belfield, and on this programme we like to talk to really clever people, really talented people, and we've got one of those for you today, definitely. David Garrett is the virtuoso. He's a child genius who is second to none on the violin, and he's so popular around the world, and I'm so glad to say he joins us on the programme now. David, how are you?
Very well, thank you very much for having me.
It's a real pleasure because you're so talented, and that's nice because there aren't that many people in music today who can really do it well.
Well, you know, I think there are, of course, a number of people who are amazing musicians, which I've been working with in the last few years. But you're right. There's, of course, a lot of people out there which maybe are more focusing on PR rather than the real art.
I've had an extraordinary reaction from your fans, particularly in places like Germany, where they're obsessed with you. They love you, don't they?
Well, it's very fascinating for me also to kind of see that, and to be quite honest, I don't really know exactly why they're so enthusiastic. I guess they just enjoy listening to the different varieties in music which I perform, because it's not only one direction. And but I'm very happy, of course, that they get so enthusiastic about the whole project.
And they also think you're a nice bit of trouser. They think you're gorgeous.
Well, that doesn't harm the whole thing, I guess.
What's it like being a child star? Because that's when you started, and that's when everybody became so obsessed with you. There's so many young stars who go on to achieve nothing, yet you're still here. How have you managed to be that person who had the talent and keep your feet on the ground?
Well, it's been not an easy time. I think it's quite a burden to be very good at a very early age, and you pretty much have to fight through your teenage years in order to sustain the drive. And of course, at some point, you have to take responsibility for your art. And I think that's the most difficult time, of course, to make your own decision to continue with that. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle.
Is it God-given?
You definitely need, the physical abilities and, something called talent. But I don't know if it's God-given. I think there's a lot of work involved with it. I mean, you can have a lot of talent and don't work, and I don't think much will come out of it. The other way around, you can work a lot without talent. It's also not going to happen. So it's a good combination of both.
How hard was it when they found out that you had a talent and you had an ability quite extraordinary compared to other people, and they made you work to be as great as you are today? Because as a child, it's very hard to recognise why they're encouraging you to do it, isn't it?
It is, actually. Yeah, you're right. Obviously it was quite difficult. I mean, from my very, very early age, people have been always pretty much telling me that, I was talented and this was the thing I was meant to do. So at some point, I think the difficult thing is to kind of, you just accept it for such a long time until you grow older, and then you kind of start questioning things. Is this really something I want to do? Is it just something I'm, particularly good at? And I think that's the most important question to answer for yourself.
Was it chance that you found the violin? Why that instrument and not the piano, for example?
Well, a little bit of luck. I have a 2-year older brother who started playing the violin first, and I don't think he was particularly good at it, or he didn't like it. Whatever the reason, he kind of gave me his instrument basically to take the attention from him, and I kind of liked it, so a little bit of luck.
How tricky is it? I mean, I play the piano and it's relatively simple because you've only got a few notes to play. You've only got a few strings to play, but you make it sound so much better than so many other people. What is the skill of playing a violin?
Well, I think you have to be able to listen objectively to yourself. I think that's the key for any musician to, be able to hear you from a different perspective, Also, be very critical with what you're doing. Never kind of slack on what you want to actually produce.
It's also interesting, isn't it? You see a lot of people touring with big bands and lots of backing groups, particularly singers. There's no hiding away when you play the violin, is there? Because it's you and people just want to hear you.
Why would I hide away? I think the instrument is beautiful, and I think it's... I would never cheat the audience like that.
And tell me about playing the violin, and a particular violin. Is it like driving a car? Some are better than others?
Definitely some are, let's put it like that. Some cars work for your personality better, It's you have a choice, of course, and certain things you feel more comfortable in. Same with instruments, certain sounds, certain kind of like, the punchiness, or like more brighter, more darker. You have to find your own voice and, of course, your own violin at some point.
And for you, what makes a great violin? What sound are you looking for?
Well, I think if I play something and I can identify my ideal sound with what I'm doing at that same moment, I think that pretty much explains what I'm looking for.
And I've seen you play many times, and you do go at it hammers and tongs. How much damage can you impose on that violin when you're at those big moments where you're hitting all the notes?
Well, obviously, those instruments are made to kind of sustain that kind of like strength. So normally, under normal circumstances, nothing happens. Of course, it's always possible to slip a little bit with the bow or with the finger, especially when you do like fast pizzicatos. So, something can happen, but I think, obviously, that's a reasonable risk.
And how much of a diva are you when it comes down to the sound system? Because the violin is such a beautiful thing to hear live. You start sticking microphones around it, it can change the sound completely, can't it?
Yes, but, we're in a very lucky time, I think. Fortunately, there are good sound system these days, which are very, very helpful to kind of get, the quality sound out there.
Was there ever a point where you thought, I don't want to be David anymore. I don't want to be the guy who goes around the world with the violin. I just want to be private and me. Did you ever consider giving it up, or is this your life?
It is my life. It's something I love doing. And of course, there are always moments where, sometimes you probably want to have a little bit more quiet time. But, you got to suck it up. I think every job has, good and bad sides. And, as long as it's, more good than bad, I think it's you have a very lucky profession.
What's it like to be so good that wherever you go, people revere you, and you know that the expectations are so high? How do you cope with that pressure?
Good question. I don't really think about it that much. I think the first thing I try to do is, please my own standards, and normally when I do that, everybody's happy. So I think that's the key to it.
And what about the special venues? Is there somewhere you always look forward to going back to?
Of course, there are a couple of places which are always fantastic to perform. In London, the Royal Albert Hall is one of those places. In Germany, probably the Berlin Philharmonic. New York, the Carnegie Hall. So there are like a couple of really nice, traditional, great sounding halls.
I remember watching Vanessa May, and she made classical music sexy. There aren't many people, Il Divo have done a good job of that, bringing the normal people, the masses, into classical music. Was that something that you really wanted to do?
Well, I didn't want to make make the classical music sexy. I probably was more concerned about, introducing the instrument, showing what is possible musically to do with it, all the different musical directions you can actually expose the violin to. So I was never really concerned necessarily about anything but that. But obviously, some people, of course, care about the looks, and that's the way they probably find to what I'm doing. But, either way, I don't mind that at all either. So whatever it is, as long as they, as long as I'm able to, bring classical music a little closer to people who probably would not buy out, who probably would not go and buy a classical CD, I think that's definitely worth it.
Tell us about your background. Where are you from, and what were your parents like?
Well, I grew up in Germany. My mom was a classical ballerina. My dad is a lawyer, but he's self-employed right now, and he's actually an auctioneer for antique kind of things, instruments, and like all kinds of like auctions. And basically they were both involved in classical music when I grew up. So there were a lot of classical CDs around, LPs at that point still, and it was a classical music household, and I guess that's how I kind of got into that music.
Are they still writing classical tunes as well as they did 100 years ago? I know that sounds like an odd question, but for you as a violinist, you must know instantly whether something's going to be as good, as fulfilling as maybe a Mozart piece or something like that.
Well, the problem, or well, it's not a problem, but basically it's difficult as a contemporary composer, of course, to write in a style which, is outdated. Let's put it like that. I find it sometimes a little unfortunate because as I was at Juilliard, I know a lot of my friends who were composers over there and studied composition. And it always felt like people were forced in order to come up with something. It was more important to have something new rather than something good. And I always felt it was maybe the wrong approach because, I do enjoy playing atonal music, but I felt like people were almost pressured to write that kind of music, which, if you love it, that's great, but, you should never feel pressured to do it.
And when you were at Juilliard, did you find that you stuck out from the crowd?
I think I did a little bit. I guess I was always a little bit different, I would say.
I said to you earlier, you made it sexy, and I perhaps chose my words wrong. What I mean is you make it accessible, and you make it fun. A lot of people in classical music, we see this with the BBC Proms, they get a bit snooty about it, and they get their head stuck up the backside, and then it turns a lot of people off. You really do have to work hard to make people go, look, this is great music if you'll just give me a chance to listen, and that's really what you try and do, isn't it?
Exactly. It's really about just making people feel comfortable, and I think that's the key, because the music is great and speaks for itself. So you just have to find the right approach to get people to listen to it.
And your life is very showbiz. You're flying around the world. How tiring is that, firstly?
Well, it can be exhausting once in a while, and I try to catch up on sleep as much as possible. But, that's the life I chose, and, no, I got to deal with it.
And as for being the rock star of classical music, which you are, your fans just adore you. Is there any feeling or any way of explaining that feeling when they just want to get hold of you and touch you? I think I'm turning myself on here, to be honest.
Well, you know what? I think it's extremely sweet when I see it. I really have to say that it's almost embarrassing. Actually, it is embarrassing sometimes, because in the end, I kind of feel overwhelmed, and I'm just, in quotation marks, trying to, make people happy and give them a good time. So sometimes I think it's a little embarrassing when people get too much involved and too kind of touchy and over the top. But, I think it's nothing bad, so I enjoy it sometimes too.
Your version of Smooth Criminal that you played in Berlin draws on themes from Mozart's Fifth Violin Concerto.
Right.
How do you think of something like that?
Well, I listen to a lot of music, pretty much all day. And, sometimes you just... if you know so many things, sometimes you just mix stuff up, and sometimes that's a good thing, because that's where good ideas actually come up with. You play around with the harmonic progressions, and sometimes you just end up with a total different piece. And sometimes, especially when you do like such a record, a crossover record, it really helps, because you can see where where a certain harmonic pattern came from and where it ended up, actually. So that's actually quite a fun thing to do.
I find it an incredibly emotional instrument to listen to. How moving is it for you when you're playing it? Because it's one of the few instruments that can actually make me cry.
Well, of course, it always depends what kind of pieces you're playing. Of course, when you're playing a happy tune, it's you probably don't get as emotional as if you play like a Sarabande by Johann Sebastian Bach or something like that. So definitely emotionally, you have to be involved when you play. Obviously, you practice, and you're not always emotionally attached to the music you're playing, especially when you just rationally go through technical places. But I think on stage, you definitely have to let loose and just really enjoy the music, as everybody else hopefully is.
And the violin's very cool now. If you listen to Coldplay's new album, it's full of tracks full of the violin, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that the violin was a great instrument, especially with vocals. I think it works very well.
How do you prepare for your concerts? What do you do? How do you get in the mood?
Well, obviously, you start a few weeks before and just go through the program slowly, prepare it so you feel at ease with it. And of course, if it's with orchestra, about a day or 2 days before, you start rehearsing and you get to know the orchestra, the conductor. And, that's the fun part because obviously everybody has, their opinion on the piece and you get to kind of negotiate through. And, I really enjoy doing this.
I suspect you're not going to answer this next question, but what's the best piece of music to play on the violin?
Oh, God, it's very, very difficult to say that. I kind of do it like the piece I'm working on always becomes my favorite piece. It's more of a psychological thing, so I'm, thrilled about what I'm doing every day of my life. So even if it might not be my favorite piece, I kind of make it my favorite piece for the time while I have to prepare it.
And is there a special orchestra you like playing with?
Oh, there's so many good orchestras these days. Very, very tough one to answer. Sometimes, funnily enough, I enjoy playing with orchestras which are not maybe the most perfect because somehow I feel you learn from imperfection more than from perfection.
And as for the violin itself, is there a dream instrument you would like to play, or is there one you've got your eye on for the future?
I would actually love to play the drums, and I'm practicing already, so it's not really something totally different, but I think it's fun to do.
Would you like to maybe incorporate that in the show in the future then? Maybe half on the violin, half on the drums?
Well, maybe not half on the drums, but, I'm thinking about doing one piece for the next tour.
It's possible, isn't it? Some questions then from your fans. We've had a million emails. Siobhan says, who's your stylist? Who makes you look great?
That would be me.
Really?
Oh, God, I don't have a stylist. Come on, I'm a guy. I mean, I don't think there's... I think that's pretty... I can take care of myself, basically,
David, I'm a guy and I look ridiculous. I mean, I'm hideously ugly. I have no idea how to dress and my hair's stupid. You've got the look, haven't you?
Well, maybe I feel the same about me, I think it's all about perspective. And I don't know, I just try to, feel comfortable in myself. And apparently it doesn't come across too bad.
All right. Anya says, how exhausting are your concerts? How do you feel at the end?
It really depends. Sometimes I really get very involved in the concert and it takes a lot of energy out. Sometimes I'm, very relaxed and I just pretty much play through the piece. And then it's not as exhausting. It really depends on the mood.
And BB says about the flying. How do you cope, though, with those flights? They are annoying, aren't they?
You know what? Sometimes I enjoy actually going on the airplane because, you don't have much time to read or actually sleep, and especially if you have a long international flight. I sometimes really enjoy going on board and just taking the blanket and just falling asleep for like a good 7-8 hours.
Nitol, that's what I use.
Excuse me?
Nitol, puts you straight to sleep.
Really? All right. Well, it's probably the same like NyQuil or something like that.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Take the herbal version and you'll be absolutely fine. Wake up the other
I'm fine with NyQuil, actually.
Well, you don't know you've taken off. You don't know you've landed till the lady wakes you up. It's fabulous.
It is, actually.
Elise says, when exactly will your next core classical CD be coming out?
Well, we're recording the next core classical album in February next year. And it's going to be the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto in E minor and a couple of other more romantic short pieces. And we're going to do that in February, so release date will probably be next year, autumn.
We were talking earlier about your siblings, and a question came in about how they feel about you, having all the focus on you, particularly from your parents in the early days. Does that breed any resentment?
You know what? My siblings are very, very smart. They knew exactly that, having a lot of attention isn't always, only benefit. In the contrary, it comes with a lot of baggage as well. So they never really felt jealous or anything. In the contrary, I think they were always extremely supportive and my best friends.
And the child prodigy tag that you've got, is that difficult to kick off? At what point do you become an adult and a human being in your own right?
Well, I think at some point you just have to shake it off. I mean, I never really saw myself as a child prodigy. I think that would be very weird and very self-centered if you are like 12, 13 years old and you're like telling yourself, oh, I'm a child prodigy. I think nobody does that. But at some point, I guess you don't get annoyed by it, but you just don't see sense in people saying that. So you just, grow up and hopefully people will notice that.
Maya sent in a very interesting question about who do you enjoy watching? Who do you like seeing perform?
Who do I like seeing perform? I love to go to symphony concerts, opera concerts, anything which doesn't have to do with soloists, like instrumentalists. I don't know. I mean, I play so much, violin music. I sometimes really enjoy getting out of there and not necessarily listen to another violin concerto, just get a break from it.
Tell us about your composing as well, because that's a big part of your life. How do you do that? It's not easy, is it? Does it come to you at certain moments? Do you have to be in a certain mood? Oh,
I actually find it quite easy, especially when I'm traveling and I'm in the car for a long time or in the plane. It's a great thing to kind of like not get bored. You just sit down and anyway just chill out and think about a good melody or a good harmonic progression. And then you just, write it down. And when you arrive, home, you pretty much just sit down on the piano and, play it in.
What would be your ideal audience? How do you want them to react to you?
I really would never think about how an audience should react. I think any reaction should be natural. If they like it or if they dislike it, I think there's no such thing as me trying to impress people if they're not impressed. I think it should be a natural progress. And, there was never an audience which I didn't like playing for.
Well, they certainly love hearing you. A question coming out of Italy. Tamara says, when are you going to go and perform there?
In Italy, I'm actually going to Italy pretty soon, I think, to Sicily, which sounds also good for me because it's a very, very nice place, as you know.
And great food as well.
But I always play like in Florence and Milan once or twice every year, so it's pretty regular.
And what about Japan? We've had emails from there.
Japan, well, unfortunately I had to cancel the last tour because I got terribly ill, but I think we're rescheduling something for next year.
It's interesting, isn't it? When you're a violinist, you presume that, he's always going to be fine because the voice isn't your main instrument. On those days when you're not feeling 100%, how do you muster that energy? Because it's incredibly physical what you do.
Well, obviously, when you don't feel that well, you kind of cut back on work in order not to, exhaust yourself, especially when you have to perform in the evening. Just try to relax as much as possible.
And very finally, I've got to ask you, is your violin like your baby? Is it with you at all times? What do you do when you travel? Oh,
it's very difficult for me to answer that. I get that quite a lot, that question, because I don't have a baby yet. So I would assume that I hope I will take as good care of the baby as I do with the violin. But, obviously, nobody's perfect and, always stuff can happen. In the end, I guess it's as close as you can come.
I understand there's a lot of volunteers should you require a baby.
You're funny.
Thank you very much for talking to me. Seriously, it's a great privilege because you're one of the few people I get to speak to who really is brilliant at what you do. In this job, you get to talk to a lot of people who get to great fame and great wealth through nothing, through luck. You're not that person. You're the person who sat there and worked incredibly hard, and you, I gather, have to work every day on your skill because it's something that can be taken away from you as quickly as it comes.
Absolutely, and especially, the cruel thing a little bit is that you play 100 great concerts and you do one which is so-so, and people will remember that one. So you always have to be on the top of your game. And, that takes a lot of responsibility.
David Garrett has got the CD in the stores now, Virtuoso, many CDs over the years, and you're one of those few people, as I say, who really does the business. And thank you so much for sparing the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.